Hi everybody, welcome to Let's Make Art. My name is Sarah Cray and I'm here to paint with you like I am every week. It's what we do. So this week we are painting our pomegranate. Fun, fallish. Actually, I just realized that I don't know if pomegranate is associated with fall.
Kind of makes me think of a beach. I don't know why.
Oh, so we have opposite things going on here.
Yeah, but that's all right. It's edible and we eat a lot in the fall.
That's right. That's right. Is it ripe in the fall? Can you get it in stores in the fall? I don't know.
No idea.
I really thought that you did, and then right now I'm realizing I don't know that.
It's always right when we start to film. We're like, wait a second.
But I put it in the October box because I'm like, pomegranate, fall. Don't know if that's accurate. Sorry if it is not. Okay, we are using, we're going to be using two different kinds of watercolor paint, and that's because for our subscribers, if you got this in the kit, you will have the travel set with the cake pans. If you order this kit individually, you will be getting liquid watercolors. So I'm teaching with both. That way you guys won't freak out because you'll know what to do. Pretty much.
Also, side note,
Yeah.
you nailed it.
Is it a fall fruit?
The fruit is typically in season in the northern hemisphere from September to February.
Bam.
Nailed it.
Thank you.
Wow.
Well, good for me. Sarah got 1 point. Let's not keep track though, because I would be losing for sure. All right. So we're using 4 colors with this project. So for our cake pans, we are using red, and we are using, I say in the step out, it's gonna say blueberry. That's not the correct color, it's actually sky. So whenever you see blueberry, associate that with the color sky that's in your palette. I'm blaming that on my pregnancy brain. So sorry about that.
Smart move.
Sorry about that, you guys.
Also, it looks more like a blueberry than a sky.
I think so. Actually, no, blueberries almost have like a purplish tint.
I was actually going to say that. I'm glad I was right.
Okay, and then we also have lime. And we have daisy, which is our yellow. And this is a good little thing I want to show you guys. If your cakes get dirty, like my yellow is dirty, all you have to do is get it wet, like so. And then take a paper towel and lift, and it's clean again. That's all you gotta do. So then let's put some yellow on there. Daisy, this is Daisy. Okay, for our liquid watercolors, we have red, and we have Tahoe blue, and we have leaf green. Man, these colors are pretty spot on. And we have deep yellow. I mean, are you serious? Same colors. So
you sure
great.
the watercolor blue isn't blueberry?
Yeah.
Just a little paint color joke
Just a
for
little
you.
joke, little inside joke that only you know if you've watched the first 2 minutes of this tutorial. Okay. So we are using 2 paintbrushes, around 6 and around 2. We always use these paintbrushes. They're our go-to guys. You can get them at letsmakeart.com if you do not have these. Same with all of the supplies we are using. The steps. We are doing this in 5 steps. So step number 1, we're going to do a light sketch. Step number 2, we are going to paint this back pomegranate. Step number 3, we are going to do the edge of the front pomegranate. Step number 4, we will do the pomegranate guts or seeds. Just guts felt like more fun for me to say. And then step number 5, we'll do the leaves.
Guts also seems more fallish due to Halloween.
Yes.
So it's appropriate.
Yes. Okay. Now, we are going to do our oath. We're going to do some warm-ups, and then we will start our project. You are welcome to skip this part if you guys want to, okay? Just let you know, you have full control over the speed of which this video is shown. So skip it if I talk too much, which I've been known to do. So I'm really sorry about that, but I am who I am, okay? And Keenan likes it, I feel.
Yeah, it makes it more interesting.
I mean, I think so.
Because if we're just sitting in back here painting,
I mean, do
I
you
don't
really
know
just
how
want to
interested.
watch me paint for an
Yeah,
hour?
I don't know.
No.
I mean, I've got 3 good different angles, but
Okay, so for our warm-ups, what we're going, oh no, our oath, sorry. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise not to compare my work.
I promise not to compare my work.
And I promise to have fun.
And I promise to have fun.
Thank you. And I like starting off that way because, gosh darn it, when we start comparing work, it just doesn't make it fun anymore. And I used to do that a lot. And I was really competitive, and it just wasn't a great time. And so I want you to learn from me and not be about that. Okay, so for our warm-ups, we're going to do 2 warm-ups. The first thing we're going to talk about is value. And this is probably a warm-up that we're going to do before every single painting, and that's because value is extremely important when you're painting anything with form. Value is all about the lightness and darkness of a color, not about the color itself. With watercolor, in order to get a lighter value, all you have to do is add more water. That's it. So great. That's why I love watercolor. Easy peasy. So if you want a dark value, you want to make sure that you're picking up lots of paint, okay? So this would be me picking up lots of paint with my paintbrush, painting dark value. Now, if I dip my paintbrush a couple of times, hit it off the side of my cup and paint with that, it's the same hue, but it's a lighter value. Do the same thing, lighter value. Keep on going, and you'll see that the more you rinse, the less paint you will get. And here are some different values. And you'll see within our pomegranate, we have white areas, which are really important. Make sure you leave white areas in this painting for our highlights. We have white areas, we have some lighter values. That's where there's some barely there color. And then we have some medium values and we have some dark values. You want to make sure that you have a range of values whenever you are painting something with form. If all of your values are even, then your image will appear flat. So if you want any sort of form or dimensionality, put in your values, okay? Now the next thing we're gonna go over just really quick is just leaves. So there's a couple ways that you can do leaves. If you're using a larger brush and a round, you can do it in one stroke by light pressure and then pushing down and then light pressure again. So you can do it kind of like that. But what I like to do, because that's tricky sometimes, is I'll just outline my leaf and then fill it in. And you can always reshape your leaves. One thing I want you to remember is we want the middle of our leaf to be wide and the top and the bottom to be narrow. So if you do your leaf like this, where it's all the same thickness across, it's not gonna look super leafy. So but if you accidentally do that, it's not the end of the world because you can just shape it again, okay? And then of course, you can drop in some water. Maybe you wanna drop in some color. Play around with it. This is watercolor, this is fun. Always some accidental art going on. It's beautiful. Okay, that's it for our warm-ups. I think we are ready to get started with our project. So our step number 1 is we're going to sketch. There is not an outline with this project, and I know that might seem really scary, but it's essentially 2 circles, and they're not even perfect circles, because if you look at pomegranates, they're not perfectly circular, they're just round, and they actually tend to be a little bit squatty, I feel. I feel like their width is a little bit wider. That's just me. But, so you can eyeball it if you want. So what I'll do is I will do like 1 circle, kind of rough. And then when I do my second pomegranate, I'm just gonna overlap it just by a little bit, okay? And then I can go back in and shape it. So sometimes it's really nice to just kind of sketch a little bit before, and that way you have a plan. Also, pencils can erase. Also, watercolor is transparent. So if you draw this super dark, you will see it through your painting. So sometimes what I like to do is I'll do a sketch and then I'll just kind of erase it. So then the lines are barely there. Or another option is you can use watercolor pencils, and that way those lines will blend out when water hits them. Okay. Now, if you don't feel comfortable drawing circles, you can use a circular thing to do it. So if I do my one pomegranate and then I'll do another one overlapping it like so, and then you put the little thing that kind of looks like a crown. Oh, these kind of look like Christmas ornaments, don't they?
Yeah, they do. I was thinking they look like I don't even know what they're called. They're like little vases, but they use them for mixing certain liquids. Scientists do.
I only can think of a beaker,
Sure.
but that's not the correct term. Beakers are like cups
Yes.
with little spouts. Okay. If you want to sketch your leaves at this point, you are more than welcome to. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm the kind of gal that likes to just go as I go and like plan it as I go. So I'm just going to do my pomegranate shape. And then for the inside on my front pomegranate, they kind of have like a core and just a little bit of an edge. So I'm just gonna put in this core here. Now, if you guys are looking at me saying like, I don't know how to draw that, let me just calm your fears by saying, you know, it's a natural fruit, that each one of these center cores is not gonna look exactly the same between the different pomegranates. So whatever you paint, I'm sure there is one that looks like that. And also some funky stuff goes on with cores. Like, I know this is different, but have you ever cut open a bell pepper and inside there's another baby bell pepper growing on the core?
No.
Oh, that's happened to me a couple of times. So even if you have a weird growth, it's happened sometimes.
Yeah.
So like, don't stress out. But it's almost like a little hurricane. Does that look like a tornado?
It does kind of look like a tornado.
So it's kind of like that, a funnel shape. Yes?
Oh yeah, funnel. I'm familiar with funnels.
I just like to think of other things that look like shapes that are
Harder to draw.
harder to draw.
I was gonna make a lip joke when you were doing the warm-ups.
The leaves. Okay. But I'm not going to draw the seeds. I'm not going to do any of that stuff.
Did you know that pomegranates have a blossom with petals like a flower before they're ripe?
I feel like that's pretty common for fruits.
It is?
Yeah, like lemons have really beautiful like white and purple blossoms.
No way.
Yeah. And then the
Well-
blossom is what turns into the fruit. It's like the beginning stages.
It's pretty.
It is pretty.
I had no idea.
I don't know if that's true for all fruits. I know that oranges and lemons have it. I don't know enough about
Fruit.
fruits. Strawberries have it.
Do
I know
you?
that. Strawberries have little white flowers.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I need
Somebody
to
will
eat
tell
more
us.
fruit, I think.
No, you need to grow more things. So we finished step 1, and now we're going to start painting. On the right-hand side, I'm going to be using my cake pans. On the left-hand side, I'm going to be using my liquids. Okay? And I'll keep hopefully you can see just a corner of the palette, so you'll keep track of what is what. Okay, so I'm going to do my back pomegranate first. I'm going to use my round 6. And then what I like to do is I like to put in my shadow first and then blend out from there. So the darkest part on this pomegranate is where like near the bottom because it's spherical. So there's going to be a shadow near the bottom part where it's where it is rounding down and away from the light. That's why there's shadow here. And also this pomegranate that's in front of it would be casting a shadow. So I'm going to mix a little bit of my red with a little bit of my sky. You want to have more red than sky, and as you mix, you're going to see it's going to create a purpley color. You want to make sure it's a red purpley color and not a blue purpley color, okay? So here we have my purpley color here, okay? So right on the edge is where I'm going to put that shadow, and then the shadow is not going to go all the way to the bottom. It's going to go almost to the bottom and then kind of up the side. Looks good. And then I'm going to rinse my brush and grab just red. And do a little bit of just red on the bottom. And then for me, I like to put undertones of other colors here. If I wanted to, I could use just water to blend this out. However, I feel like if you look at the actual colors of things and you want a richness to them, there's undertones of other colors. And so like in the shadows, we have hints of purple. If you look at highlights and things like that, there's hints of like yellow and orange. And so I love it when you have the opportunity to do secondary colors, do it, because that's just gonna make it more rich. So I'm gonna grab my red, and I'm going to mix a little bit of yellow in with my red. Now, I'm going to leave a white space on the right-hand side and the left-hand side and the right-hand side, okay? So I have my red, and I'm kind of working around it, and I'm picking up my paintbrush, and I'm leaving some spaces for the highlights. Now I'll go back in and blend them out, but we want to start that way. And I'm going to pick up a little bit more yellow and bring some warmth into this red. And now I'm just going to use water to blend to the top. Okay. Now on this right hand side, I'm going to cover my highlight by just doing a couple strokes over it. I don't want to go too crazy working back and forth, because you see how I kept this a lighter value. If I were to just take my brush stroke and go blah, 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 blah over, it would even out. But I want to keep some light value to show the difference in highlights and values. If you accidentally paint it too much and blend over it, and so you lose it like this, you can put it back in by lifting up color. So you would rinse your brush, pat it dry, and then do a little swoop and pick up that color. Swoop, pick up that color. Now you have a lighter value, and I would go in and put a little bit of yellow in there for color range. Okay? So I'm just kind of taking my yellow . Now on the left hand side, I'm gonna make this highlight a little bit smaller, but I'm gonna leave it there. I just want like a nice bright white spot on this pomegranate. Okay, all right. And there is my first pomegranate, step 2, with using my cake pans. And of course, if you want to layer more color, you can. If you want to slightly change your pomegranate shape a little bit, you absolutely can. Fun. I just love, And the fun thing about painting is when you're doing these little pops of color, the paint will sometimes separate, which I think is really cool because then you get these hints of like that is a section of just orange right there, which I think is really lovely. So don't be afraid. I know it seems so scary to just go in and drop in color, but it really can add so much dimension to your painting. So just be brave and remember that it's only a piece of paper. And the worst thing that can happen is it just doesn't turn out. Like that's the only risk you're taking. So it might be worth it. Okay, now I'm gonna move on to my liquids. And I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna grab my red and mix it with a little bit of the blue. I wanna make sure I have more red than blue. So it turns into like a deep, almost like a wine color.
They can't see that.
Oh, what if I do this? Can they see that?
Yes.
Okay. I'll do this next to it and how about we do this? Let's do that. And we'll put this here. Does that solve things?
That solves all the things.
Oh, great. Okay. So here's my wine red and my shadow is going to be right at this edge where they overlap here. And then it goes along the bottom. Okay. Sorry, I need some pure bright red. And then I'm going to take just pure red, start going along the edge here. Okay, and then I'm going to leave a highlight section here and a highlight section here. And then I'm going to take my red and I'm going to grab a little bit of yellow. I'm going to start mixing that into the mix. Okay. Then I'm going to rinse my brush and just pulling from the color that's already around, I'm just going to do a couple swaps over my right hand highlighted section. And then this I'm just going to make a little bit smaller. I feel like I went really wide on the right hand side. Okay, do you see my circle? Does it seem really wide? One, I can leave that because I'm sure there's a pomegranate that looks like that somewhere. Yeah. But if it's bothering you too much, you can always just reshape your circle. So if you're just like, gosh, that went really wide, then you can just make your bottom bigger.
Perfect.
And then I would add a little bit more shadow since I elongated it. But again, don't be afraid to drop in some color just to see what it does. Like how fun the different colors we have going on. And then I'm going to do a little extra deeper red right around the top, kind of where it starts to crown out, like so. Is that looking too round now? I'm wondering if I made it too...
No, it's great. You're just too close to it.
Is that it?
Yep.
Okay. Now I dropped in yellow here and you can see this is where it's starting to separate. As your painting dries, your paint is going to move and do different things. You can always come back in and make some adjustments to it. Or what I like to do is I like to just like let it be and see how it plays out, because you might have done like something super cool that you didn't mean to do. And this is a very strong yellow that's popping out, but I'm going to leave it because I just want to see how it plays out, because that actually might be just a really cool texture to leave there. So don't, sometimes you need to just let things be a little bit before you decide to like get rid of it.
I'm a big fan of those textures right
Yeah, isn't that cool?
there. Yeah.
And honestly, I think that this purple that we got on our cake pans right there is really beautiful. Can you see that? Just
I
like
think
those
so, yeah.
undertones of purple in there are just like
Gorgeous.
so gorgeous. Okay, we are going to move on to our second pomegranate, and we're going to start off by doing the edge and the fleshy part. I'm just going to call it the flesh, which is like the tan part in the middle.
Oh, yeah. Core.
The
You're
core.
calling it a core.
The core. Okay. So, to do this, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take only water, and I'm moving back to my cake pans now, friends. So, that's what I'm doing. Using just water, I'm going to go along the edge of my pomegranate. Now, when you get to the other side where it touches, I'm going to try and leave a really thin line, because if my first pomegranate is still wet, that will bleed into it. And then working very quickly, I'm going to pick up some red paint and just touch the perimeter. And this is called wet on wet. So the red is going to bleed out or not bleed out depending on how much water is there, depending on kind of all the different things going on. And this is a super fun technique.
This is my favorite technique.
Yeah, it's the best. Now, if you are doing your edge and it's not bleeding out a lot, it's just saying a tiny, tiny thin line. Well, one, that's not a problem, because actually this is the skin of the pomegranate. And if you cut it open and look on the side, you would just see a tiny thin layer. But if you want it to move a little bit more, there's nothing wrong with being like, come on, little fella, spread out for me, and like push it out. Now here you can see I have an uneven edge where some of it is more red and thick and some of it is more thin. I'm okay with that. I'm letting that go. That's just fine, okay? But what I am going to do is I am going to do a second run, because like here on this right-hand side, my red kind of turned to pink a little bit with that water mixture, and I want to make sure that my edge is red, like a good red. So if you want to do an extra run to make sure that that edge is just nice and dark, you can. Okay? Now, we got to paint the core and like the skin too. That's yellow. But I want to wait a second. If I do it right away, if I try and do my kind of tannish color right away with my red, they'll mix together. And I want to be able to separate the red skin from the like fleshy core. So I'm gonna let that dry just for a couple minutes. I'll do the liquid first, and then I'll come back and do the core, okay? So now I'm switching to my liquid, and I'm gonna do the same thing. Just taking a wet paintbrush, just go along the edge of the pomegranate, using just water. And if you don't paint fast enough, you can do half of the pomegranate, drop in the red, and then do the other half, okay? So don't feel like you have to get it in one turn. Okay, now I have my red paint, and I'm just gonna go along the outer edge, and you're just gonna let the red do its thing. Okay, that's it. Good job.
Easy.
If you want to do a second run to make sure if your red kind of bled out too much into a pink and you want that really strong red color, you can do another layer. You don't have to though. This is where you need to decide that for yourself if your painting needs it. Okay. Great. All right, now I'm going to move back to my pans and do my fleshy core part. So to make brown, because this is like, it's like a tan color. It's not like a bright yellow. So if I were to use just yellow, that would be like, wowza, like super bright. I need to tone it down a little bit to match that more natural desaturated tannish color that you would see. So If you mix your yellow and your red together, you're gonna get orange, okay? And then if you grab a little bit of sky and throw that in there, can they see this?
Yes.
So I put in a tiny bit of blue with my orange. Orange and blue are complementary colors, so if you mix them together, you're gonna get mud, which is kind of what we want. So I kind of have this brownish color, but it's still a warmer brown. If I added too much blue, it could turn almost green or like a different color than we want. So it was just a touch of blue. And then some water to that. And now I have this really gorgeous like light tan color. So I'm gonna take that light tan color and I'm gonna start putting it in the fleshy part. So it's gonna go along the edge here and then in this like middle. But if you can tell, especially on my reference photo, I don't do an even paint wash across the entire thing. It's gonna be a little bit darker here, and then I'm just gonna use water to kind of spread it around, because in the very center of the core, it sometimes is white. So I'm just doing like a super, super light wash, especially as I get down to the middle. And then the top and the edges are gonna be more the brown. So this tan, it's just a thin layer of this tan color. I don't want to make it too thick. It's darkest right at the top. And your red area is probably still a little bit wet, so there's going to be places where they blend together. That is not the end of the world. As long as there's still some clear separation in some of the places, you're good. That is success, my friends. Okay, now I'm gonna do the same thing for my liquids. I'm gonna take yellow and red to make orange. And then I'm gonna grab a tiny, tiny bit of the Tahoe. That's making more green. If it comes too green, do an extra swatch of red. There we go, now we have brown. Okay, so I have my warm brown, and same thing, I'm going to start kind of at the top here, add water, rinse my brush to get a light value, especially near the bottom of this core. And then just a little rim. Now this one, you can see that my red on my liquids kind of actually bled evenly across my layer of water. So there's a pretty even thickness around, and that, since that is so thick, I don't want to do my brown wash next to it, because then that would make the edge of my pomegranate like super thick. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I'm just gonna overlap the red part and not paint the white part. Does that make sense? Yep. I don't want my edge to be any thicker than this, because then it's like crazy. Sorry, my brain just farted. What's the word? Like, like I was gonna say like monster pomegranate with a super thick edge, and then I'm like, that doesn't make any sense.
I just love your apology for your brain farting.
Sorry. And then if you want to like you know me, I just like pops of color. I'm gonna do just pure yellow on some of this edge. Also, because I have such strong pops of color yellow here that it just feels right. Okay? Okay. Good job. Good job, team. We're doing great. Now we are going to do our pomegranate seeds. Now, this area, you do want to make sure that your edge and your core is dry. before you paint this, because we do want clear separation between the core skin and the edge and the seeds. And if you do it while it's wet, all of the colors will bleed together, and we don't want that. So you want to make sure you give yourself ample time to dry. What I like to do while I'm waiting for areas to dry is just work on another area, you know? Be efficient. So while I'm waiting for that to dry, let's put our little, I call them crowns. I don't know what the technical term is.
Are they openings? Are they blooms?
I don't know. Keenan will find out. So these are kind of like a brownish color. So you can just use that same brown that we've already mixed, just with stronger color to make it darker. And these kind of flare out like this.
Stamen cluster.
Oh, it's a stamen cluster. Oh,
Persistent calyx.
obviously. Keenan and I knew that. Okay. And again, these change depending on the pomegranate. They are not universally the same across the board. So yours might be longer, yours might be wider, yours might be narrow. It's okay. Look at some pomegranates, you'll see that they're all different.
Also, the core, as we have been calling it,
Yeah.
is actually known as the membrane.
Ooh, what a better word.
It's a pretty cool word.
Okay, I'm going to start calling it the membrane.
And the outside layer of the membrane color that we're looking at
Yeah.
is called the albedo.
Ooh, not as cool. I'm not going to say it.
No.
I won't remember that. Okay. So I have two different stamens. What was the name?
Stamens. And one thing is saying calyx. C-A-L-Y-X. So there's two different things. The same picture says persistent calyx and stamen cluster. So I don't know.
Okay, well, I'm still going to call it its crown.
It's crown.
I have two different crowns going on here, two different shapes. That's okay. Good job. Now we're going to move on to our liquids and do the same thing. I got my brown.
I figured it out.
Okay.
The inside of the persistent calyx is the stamen cluster. So you are painting the outside, which is the persistent calyx.
Okay. Great. Good job, Keenan.
Thanks. I'm just going to go get a degree online. I'm not sure what it is, though.
You can do it in a...
Research?
No,
Oh.
never mind. I hate it when your brain just won't go anymore.
Won't connect to
Like when
anything?
you're just like, oh, that word, and then it's like, meh, and then it just stops, and you're like, what is it? And you're like
You
pushing
thought
it,
it was a good
but it won't
idea.
go anymore, and then you just look like a fool. And people watching this are like, why am I watching this? I'm sorry. All I can say is I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry. My brain is the way it is. Moving on. Okay. I just touch it to see if it's dry. Will you end up getting fingerprints on your painting? Probably.
And the painting on your fingertips.
Is that fine? Yeah. This one is still more wet, but that's okay because I'm going to do this one first. This one is only wet near the crown part, so I'm good there.
Upside down, the membrane looks like a burning candle.
Oh, yeah. I see that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now with these seeds, I just want to stress to you how important this is, which is seeds are wet. And if you look at pomegranate seeds, they have white areas and they have deep red areas and they have pinker areas where those white and red areas meet. Do you want to get super technical and draw each seed and then do the shading on it? You can. I don't like to do that. That's so much work. And so basically all we're trying to do is to communicate the different seeds going on. And so the way that I did that is I made sure I used a bunch of different values while painting this to communicate the seeds. You can see that I left a lot of white areas, and that is because these seeds are moist, and so there is glare on them, and also because some of the actual seeds themselves have white areas. I also use a lot of super deep red, like that purpley part, to show where they kind of like the crevices in between. Okay, so I just want to be clear that you are going to be using lots of values on this. You want to make sure you lift your paintbrush and do a lot of highlights. If you end up doing an even wash across the entire thing, they will not come out as seeds. Okay, let me show you how I did this.
Okay.
I'm going to use my round 2. Get that wet. I'm going to mix a dark red first, kind of how we did our shadow on our pomegranate. So red with a tiny bit of sky. Okay. Right here at the crevice where it starts, I'm just going to start off dark. And then what I started to do is just do circles. Okay.
Oh dear.
Now this is just the starting part. Okay. And then I go in, because there are little spaces in between all my circles. I'm going to go in and fill in the little spaces. Do these little white circles need to be all the same size and perfectly the same across the entire thing?
Yes.
No.
Oh.
You want them to be different. And then I'm going to take pure red and go in with pure red also. Okay? And then you're just going to keep going on with that pattern. And as you get to the edge of your pomegranate and the bottom, your values will get lighter. So you can see here that right where it's meeting the membrane, it's really dark valued. And then when I get to the bottom here, it kind of evens out. I still have some highlights, but it stays mostly red. Okay? So I'm going to use red to do the next chunk of seeds. If you want to use a little bit of the purple, you can. But again, you just want to make sure it's the darkest, kind of right where it's meeting that membrane. Then use red as you get to the edge. Now the other thing that I would like to point out, using this method, it is possible that you will have too many white spaces. The great thing about that is you can easily cover that up. So I would rather you guys do a lot of white spaces first and then go back in and cover them up if it's like taking over, than to do the opposite, because you can't go back in unless you have white paint. So I'm just going to keep going. And then after I do the left-hand side, we can decide if there's too much white space. You know what I mean?
Duh.
Did you say like duh or da?
Da.
Da.
As in yes in Russian.
Isn't that Dutch too?
I don't know Dutch. I know Russian.
I don't either.
I know Russian words.
You don't know
I
Russian.
don't know Russian. I had to clarify.
Okay, so now I'm going in with little bits of purple just here and there. Okay, and now is where I'm using just water and kind of spreading out this red. Okay, and then now is where I'm like, okay, do I have too many white spaces going on? I'm going to say yes, but that's not a problem because I can just cover them up with paint. NBD, you know what I mean? So I'm like, okay, here, and then this is just where I'm like, where there's just so many white spaces, and it looks like I can get rid of some over here. And I'm going to get rid of some over here. Okay, that's starting to feel better and not so white. Okay. And again, just making sure it's nice and dark right around the membrane there. Okay, and I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. Same exact thing, just on the opposite side. So I'm gonna start off with my dark red right here around the membrane, and I'm gonna do my circles. Now again, I don't want you to stress about these little circles. They do not need to be the same. They do not need to be perfect. They don't need to make sense. They're just a way for you to remember to leave white spaces. That's essentially all they are. And then you're going to go in and cover some of them up. Now I'm switching to pure red. Just using pure red for these circles now. And then if you want lighter values, you can use just water to spread out. And then this is where I'm like, okay, where are some spaces that I can cover up some of these highlights, because I don't need to have that many. Okay,
Nice.
that looks pretty good. I like it. And what might be very helpful for you if you're really struggling with how much white to leave in, the best thing to do is to walk away from your painting. So like, and this is why reference photos look different than when I actually paint it, is because when I'm painting projects, I take a step back and like move away from it and do something else, and then I come back to it and then I make any adjustments. But when you're filming a tutorial, it's not like I can be like, peace out, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just keep on going. But if it gives you a fresh eye, because when you're painting, you're so in it that it's hard for you to actually see things. Like even me talking to that camera for a few minutes and then going back, my left-hand side, there's way more white that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna cover up just a couple more spots. So give your eyes and yourself a little bit of a break while you're painting, and then come back to it after a little bit. And then you can make some more decisions, okay? Okay, good job. Now I'm gonna move on to my liquid. Okay, and you know how I talked about like your painting's gonna dry and change as you're painting, and now this is dry. And there are some areas of this yellow that I really love, but I think the yellow overtook it a little bit too much, that I want to put red back in on my back pomegranate. So before I do my seeds, I'm just going to do that really quick. I'm going to grab some red and just kind of maybe more over here. I just want to put some red so it's not looking like an orange pomegranate. I'm going to leave some of the yellow, but not all of it. There we go. That feels better. And then also this kind of bled out weird, so I'm just going to smooth that over. Okay. Okay, feels better. All right, now on to our seeds. I'm gonna use my round 2. You might still have some dark purple already mixed, or still mixed from our shadows. If you don't, you can just take red, mix a little bit of blue in there. And then we're just going to start, same way. It's darkest around the membrane. And then start doing your round seeds. And honestly, the faster you do this, the better. Sometimes if you go so slow, then that gives you the opportunity to question every single mark you make. And that is not fun painting, I feel. If you're sitting there like, ooh, does that circle perfect? It's like, oh gosh, don't stress out, you know what I mean? We're gonna cover most of this up anyway. Again, it's just a tool for us to use to remember to leave highlights. Okay. And then now is when I go in and blend some things out. Don't forget to use water also for those light red values. Okay, there is one side. Actually, let me finish the bottom. Okay, now we'll do the other side. Can they hear that construction?
A little bit.
I don't
Quick
know
fun fact.
Yeah.
The Spanish conquistadors brought the pomegranate to America.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
That's from keepcaliforniafarming.org.
They also brought with them diseases.
Well, you can't win them all.
Okay. I don't know if our people will ever know what it's like to watch a tutorial that doesn't have construction going on in the background.
Nope. Just wait till we have not 2, but 3 air conditioning units on the roof above us going on at the same time.
It's gonna be great. It's gonna be fine. Okay, doing darker values where it's touching the membrane. Getting rid of the extra white spaces that I don't need. Just start filling them in. And if you do not have bleed proof white, which is one of my favorite tools to use, 1, stay tuned for November box, and 2, I encourage you to get it. Because if I were to blend this out too much that I got rid of all of my white highlights, then I could take my bleed proof white and just do little dots here and there. You could also use white acrylic paint if you're only doing highlights, but just be careful. Don't use it too much because acrylic is opaque. So it has different consistencies than watercolor, so there would be a clear difference between the paints. But on highlights, it's not a huge deal. But it's when you start to use it a lot that's when it can look a little bit funky. White gouache would also work, or maybe even like a white like gel pen if you have that for, like, I don't know, journaling or lettering or something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think that is it. All my seeds. Now the other thing I would probably do if I had some bleed proof white, and I kind of was able to keep it on this one, is you see how it's really light here? And this one not so much because that paint spread super evenly out. I would go in and put in a light value using like bleed proof white or something right there, because I feel like that adds to the dimension a little bit. And I also have it in my reference. Okay, just a little thing. Oh, that is liquid that I just put on that, but that's okay. Okay, that was step 4. We have one step left, which is to do our leaves. That's it. You are free to sketch your leaves out before. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to put my leaves in. The one thing that I do want to show you guys to be careful of is you do not want your leaves coming straight down and straight to the top, because that will create very strong implied lines in your composition. And if I have some leaves coming down here that go straight down, my eye will then follow that line and then go directly off the paper. So whenever I add leaves to a composition, or whenever I'm doing like botanical compositions, I always like to put a slight curve in it so then it doesn't create such strong implied lines. Okay, so you can see here that this kind of curves down and this kind of curves up, and then that way it kind of keeps that same. You want your composition to be almost, of course, depending on what you're trying to do. But for me, I try to make it so your eye wants to stay in. So I try and do almost a circular composition. So it's more like if I do curved lines this way a little bit, or maybe even that way, my eye is going to want to come back to it. Where if it goes straight up or straight down, there's nothing to bring my eye back. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So let's do our cake pans first. I'm going to grab a little bit of green. Now I love to mix yellows and blues in with my greens. Usually I never use straight green out of the tube without mixing another color in it, because like I've already said a billion times, I like undertones of other colors, and it gives you variation and it just adds interest. Okay, so you can grab some green. You can grab some yellow. You can see here, like I added yellow, and then there are like hints like that darker edge. That's where I put blue in there, okay? But you can make those decisions as you go. Ooh, that's a really pretty bluish green. Okay, so I'm just going to start by doing a leaf kind of coming up this way. That. And the stem is going to come in between here. And I like to drop in other colors. And then I have another leaf coming up this way. And don't forget to add water to your brush, because look how fun it is to have different weights of like paint within your leaf. Like I love how that's so light in the middle. I'm going to keep that there. I'm not going to add another layer of paint there, because I just think that's really beautiful. And you might even, like when you lift your brush, you might have some white spaces in there. I'm going to leave that in, but you don't have to. This one I filled in completely. So I do both. It's completely up to you. This is where you can have a little creative freedom. And this is more of a blue leaf, which I think is fun. But if that bothers you.
The blue leaf combo is my favorite.
Ooh, with that red.
Yeah.
And it also ties in that purple that's in there too,
Yeah,
which is
does.
nice. But if you want to drop in some yellow, that would tone that down. And then I have some leaves coming off this way. And you can do more leaves. Maybe you don't like leaves and you're like, I'm not interested in leaves, I'm going to do something else. This is absolutely your painting. You have every right to say no to the leaves, you know? I think I will, no, let's do the top ones. Okay. So this is kind of coming off on the left side of my pomegranate. I have one kind of coming this way. And if you want to do water drops inside, you can. When you drop in water, it pushes the pigment to the edge of that water drop, which is super cool. You'll get some great textures. If you're having a hard time doing thin lines for your stems, you can switch to your 2 to do that part. if that's easier for you.
I like to try and get as thin of a line as I can with the biggest brush I can find.
You know what? And that's why rounds are really great, is because you actually, like with round 10s or round whatever, you can get a really nice thin line with those. As long as you're super light on the pressure. But like, that's what makes rounds so wonderful, is like, they have the tiniest little point at the top.
It's a diverse brush.
It is,
Yes.
as we like to say. Okay, another thing I like to do is I just picked up this like bluish green color for this leaf, and I love it so much. But a trick that I like to do to make sure I have different values is I'm not going to pick up any more paint. I'm just going to rinse my brush a little bit and then do another leaf using that. So it gives me a different feel. And maybe drop a little bit of green in there. But it's just like a good reminder to like, sometimes you don't need to pick up more paint. Because if you're always grabbing the same amount of paint as you're painting this, all of your leaves are going to be the same exact value. So if you want that, see the different values we have in these 3 leaves, that's just because I picked up water while I was doing it. So don't be afraid to just be like, you know what? I'm not going to grab any more paint. I'm just going to use water, and I'm going to use what's already on my brush, and I'm just going to see what is there. And you can always darken it. You can always drop in color. You can have your leaves overlap. So maybe like one's kind of coming up this way and going in front of the other. Maybe your leaves are short and stubby. Maybe your leaves are long and thin. There is no wrong. I'm going to drop in some yellow though. Feels like I need some yellow in some of this. Okay, and then I have some kind of coming out this way. And I'm going to do a couple water drops here, just for texture's sake. Beautiful. Voila. My friends, we did it. Now we got to do the leaves on my liquid, and then we are done. So, same thing, I got my green. I'm going to grab some yellow. I also have my blue handy. Play with all of them. You guys are going to have your own personal preferences of what works for you. Then I'm going to do my stem kind of coming out there. And then this one I only picked up water. That. This one is just water. Feel free to drop in other colors, drop in texture, drop in water. You could even use salt on this. That would be really cool.
Salt is one of my favorite explosions.
Here, let me show you guys what it does.
Yes.
You can't see it right away. It shows more when it dries. So just put it in and then move on to something else and come back to it. And I'm going to do, even though I did only 3 leaves here and here, I feel like there needs to be a 4th one coming out here. So I'm going to add a 4th. So react to your own painting. You know what I mean? Like, you get to decide what your painting does. Even though you're following along with our tutorial, every single one of these are going to be different from each other, especially because we don't have an outline. And I can't see what your painting looks like, but you can see. So if you're like, you know, I feel like I need more leaves over here, or I want to do more over here, do it. Absolutely do it. And remember that it's only a piece of paper. And the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to throw it away. Do you have a close-up?
Yes, I do.
So you can see that wherever you put salt, it pushes the pigment out a little bit.
you remember when I said I did have a close-up?
Yeah.
It wasn't on that piece of paper.
Well, let's move it on to it.
There we go.
You see it? Right there.
Yep.
So that's what salt does. It pushes the pigment. Okay, and let's say that even though you have yellow and blue and green, you're like, these are so bright. Like the green is so bright. I don't like how bright it is. I want a more neutral green. Just grab a little bit of red and mix that in with your green, which will desaturate the green. So this is my green with a little bit of red in it. Ooh, that's a really pretty color. So, but I will say that like the feeling I get from these leaves and this color is very different than this. So even though this is a really gorgeous color, I would suggest doing one or the other, personally. However, this is your world. You can do whatever you want. But for me, I'm like, that doesn't feel like it's in the same world as these. It feels like it's in the same world as these pomegranates. Mm-hmm. But if I want it to match the other leaves, then I'm just gonna grab a little bit of bright color to drop in there. Okay, I'm gonna do some over here, and then use just water to do my second leaf. And of course, you can always drop in anything, pretty much. Okay, that's it, you guys, we're done. You did it. And you didn't have an outline with this one. So good job, congratulations. If you painted this with us, I would love it if you shared it. I know it's so scary posting pictures of your artwork. It's a very vulnerable thing to do, and I completely understand that. However, first of all, the more you do it, the easier it gets. And two, when you share your art and are willing to put yourself out there and somebody else sees it gives them the courage to do it too. You know what I mean? Because then it's like, they're like, hey, this person's painting. I've always wanted to try painting. I'm gonna try it. And it's just a really great thing. So, you know, be brave. If you're on Instagram, you can tag us at Let's Go Make Art or hashtag Let's Make Art. We have a Facebook business page, but then we also have a Facebook group that you do have to request to be a part of. It is very large, but it's a great supportive community. You can see what other people are painting along with us. That is called Let's Make Art Watercolor. So if you don't feel comfortable posting to your own Instagram or whatever, you can go there and start sharing your work that way. If you need any of these supplies, you can get them on our website at letsmakeart.com. And I think that's all I gotta say, right? Good job. Bye.